We now return to How David Lynch Stole Christmas.
Hello, I got you a present. It's a thumb. Don't look away. Let the fear wash over you.
I don't understand.
That's the whole point. Now, did you leave a plate of black coffee out for me?
No?
In the future, please leave a plate of black coffee out for me. Also in the past.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy? He missed the tag! He missed the tag!
Rest in peace to the legendary David Lynch and to Mr. Baseball, Bob Uecker. Anthology on the bad, short-lived, and forgotten television shows and events in TV history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
But Charles, your wish has been granted. The blue light means that you get, guess what?
What?
A second chance. Isn't that nice?
Episode number 531, submission number 1085, Bridget Loves Bernie. Bridget Loves Bernie aired on CBS from September 16th of 1972 to March 3rd of 1973 for 24 episodes. Hey, that's one less than a reel-to-reel picture show. Huh?
Yeah. Guys, I have some bad news. It's been a week, and I still haven't found the ghost of Bill Armstrong.
Did you put pictures of him on milk cartons?
They don't do that anymore, Mike. When's the last time you ever saw a missing person, much less a ghost on a milk carton?
I'm trying to help. Maybe he's trying to experience the hustle and bustle of some unknown downtown area. Preferably one with Rolls Royces.
And buses.
And tall buildings.
And maybe a Pete Barbuti or two. Let's just play the stupid theme. In 1971, CBS was in a state of flux somewhat, because in 71, there was what was called the Rural Purge. And I don't remember who said this, describing the Rural Purge. I think it was Buddy Ebsen. He described the Rural Purge as CBS essentially canceling anything that had trees. Maybe true, maybe not. I mean, trees are kind of ubiquitous. They're kind of everywhere. But if you do look at the shows that did not make it out of 1971 on CBS, there is a lot of good shows, but also a lot of those rural shows that we talked about. Among the shows that CBS canceled in 1971, which qualify under that rural theme, the Beverly Hillbillies, which, gosh, that had been on, I think, for probably like 11 or 12 seasons. That was on for seemingly ever. But also, they canceled Green Acres and Hee Haw, which later moved to syndication, as well as the Jim Neighbors Hour, Mayberry RFD, and the new Andy Griffith Show. CBS got rid of all the programs that Middle America was attracted to and was sort of on the rebound, if you will. They did have one big news show which actually started during the 1970-71 season, and that show is a little show called All in the Family. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. All in the Family, once it was added to CBS's lineup, seemingly made everything better around it. Not that maybe CBS needed the help, but definitely couldn't hurt. And one show that CBS brought on board for the 1972-73 season was this show, Bridget Loves Bernie. Simply put, it's about a woman and a man who meet at a bus stop. It's a little more complex than that, but that's the general premise. They meet at a bus stop, they fall in love, they get married. The reason it's a little deeper than just boy meets girl at bus stop and boy and girl fall in love, the Bridget character, Bridget Fitzgerald, was an Irish Catholic teacher, and the Bernie part, Bernie Steinberg, was a Jewish cab driver. So you had an interfaith marriage.
What?
In a time when such things were taboo, to say the least.
This is not 2025, where that would almost be laughed at. With all due respect, it's not a laughing matter, but that would be so low on the importance scale of stuff in a marriage. Oh no, this person who's Catholic is marrying a Jewish gentleman, or vice versa. Who the heck cares nowadays? But in 1972, that was a big issue. The show itself focused not just around the newly married couple, but also their families. One thing I should add is that Bridget's family was a wealthy family, and Bernie's family was working class. Bernie's family owned a delicatessen which happened to be above where Bridget and Bernie lived. With this basic premise in mind that it's just boy meets girl, well, it's Catholic girl meets Jewish boy, and again, that's a fiery topic for 1972. But with that, we're going to get into the cast. The cast itself contains many people we've talked about in the past. The first person we're going to talk about is Bernie Steinberg himself. So we're talking about the Bernie in Bridget Meets Bernie, and he is played by another Bernie, David Bernie. And David Bernie, he's just done so much stuff. Problem is, outside of this series, he really hasn't done much in terms of many episodes. It looks like he was the lead in the TV series Serpico from 1976 and 77, but that's really the only other lead role he's ever had on a TV show. David Bernie was also on the first season of St. Elsewhere. His wife on this show, Bridget Fitzgerald Steinberg, or at least for starters, Bridget Fitzgerald, was played by Meredith Baxter. She would be best known, outside of this, as Elise Keaton, the mother on the seminal 1980s sitcom Family Ties. And a little interesting nugget here, her co-star, Michael Gross, on Family Ties that is, they share the same birth date. They were both...
What?
Not even joking. They were both born on June 21st of 1947. How about that? Playing Sam Steinberg, who is presumably Bernie's father, is Harold J. Stone. No, not the judge from Night Court. That's Harold T. Stone. Harold J. Stone, he was part of Old Hollywood. He passed away in 2005 at the age of 92. He was on a little bit of everything, but also, again, like David Bernie, not many big roles. I'm seeing here 3 episodes of Ironside, 3 episodes of Hogan's Heroes, 14 episodes of My World and Welcome to It. But again, he's Old Hollywood. He goes all the way back to 1949. Playing Bernie's mother, Sophie Steinberg, is Bibi Osterwald. Bibi Osterwald was on an episode of Get a Life, and I think that was the episode where, at the end, Chris Elliott was doing his Benny Hill impersonation, running away from the women. Because I think that was the one where he was dating all the older women, if you remember that. I think She was in that episode. I don't know if she was the woman that was chasing him in the end scene, but I'm pretty sure that's the episode that she was on. We did talk about her previously on Flying High, but also she was on an episode of Super Train. Who wasn't on an episode of Super Train? Now looking at the Bride's family, Walter Fitzgerald, Bridget's dad, was played by David Doyle. You'd know him from Charlie's Angels.
Bosley!
Tom Bosley! Oh, wrong type of Bosley. He was the leader of Charlie's Angels, essentially.
No, he was just the guy who takes orders from and answers only to Charles Townsend himself.
But he related to the Angels, is what I'm implying. He was essentially like the conduit, the messenger to the Angels. Okay, here's what's being sent above. Angels, here's what you need to do. So he was essentially kind of like the leader, the boss of the Angels, even though he got his orders from higher above. Playing Amy Fitzgerald, the mother of Bridget, one of our favorites, Audra Lindley. We're talking Helen Roper. Now I'm hoping that David Doyle sort of did the Stanley Roper deadpan stare at the camera when something happens. He does that little smirk and rolls his eyes and whatnot. Going back to Bernie's side of the family, playing Uncle Mo Plotnick is Ned Glass.
Now, hold on a second. Uncle Mo, did he have like his own family-themed, fun-filled restaurant like Mo and the Simpsons did? Do you remember that episode?
I do remember.
Oh, yeah, I remember that episode.
Unky Mo, my soda used too cold. My teeth hurt. Oh, your teeth hurt. Oh, your teeth hurt. Well, that's too freaking bad. You know what? You can tell that to your freaking sody, too.
Maybe Uncle Mo decided to do something with that delicatessen that's above the residence where Bridget and Bernie live. I don't know.
Huh.
Ned Glass, another person who didn't have a whole lot of episodes of TV shows. He was on 7 episodes of Ben Casey, 9 episodes of Gunsmoke. His biggest role besides this was playing Saul Cooper on 17 episodes of Julia, a landmark TV show. Again, he is old Hollywood because his IMDb goes all the way back to 1937. 2 more folks I'm going to focus on. Again, going back to the Bridget side of things, playing Father Mike Fitzgerald is Robert Sampson. Robert Sampson's another person who did a little bit of everything, but wasn't on many shows for very long. I'm seeing episodes. He was on an episode of The Powers of Matthew Starr. Good heavens. He was on 8 episodes of Falcon Crest in the 1981-82 season. But beyond that, he really was on 1 or 2 episodes of many different series, minus 5 episodes of Steve Canyon back in 1958 and 59. So we really do have a lot of old Hollywood here, or at least old TV going on. Last person I'm going to mention is Otis Foster, played by Bill Elliott. He played Officer Grant and Officer Woods on 8 episodes of Adam 12. That actually was a very big show around this time as I was doing my research on the ratings. I did not know that Adam 12 was rated so high. It was almost consistently in the top 10, usually no worse than like top 12, top 15. I did not know that Adam 12 did that well. Well, it did have like a 7-season run. With that primary cast out of the way, we're going to jump into the episodes. And we're going to start with the first episode, which, oddly enough, is titled Bridget Loves Bernie. Go figure. Bridget and Bernie instantly fall in love, but face an uphill battle for their parents' approval due to their differing religious backgrounds. That's going to be a common topic as we go through this series. Episode 2 is titled A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Vatican. I just want to preemptively call Susan because I think we're going to need her presence for this episode. Susan, just get it out of the way. I don't want to hear you saying it after we go over this. When the Steinbergs win a trip to Rome for a private audience with the Pope, the Fitzgeralds try to prevent what they feel would be an embarrassment. The Family Guy scene with the Pope is coming in my mind. You don't mess with the Pope. I'm cooking something up.
You make the Pope look like a fool. God will make you pay. Smite them! He's cooking something up.
Continuing on, we're going to go to episode 3. Wake up, we're getting married today. Bridget and Bernie's parents want their children to have a religious wedding in place of the civil ceremony. Is it going to be a traditional Catholic wedding or a traditional Jewish wedding? Taking a look at the cast in this episode, it looks like it is a Jewish wedding because we have a Rabbi Golden in this episode. And Rabbi Golden was played by Gregory Morton, who was another one of those people that was on a little bit of everything, but not for a very long time. He was on 8 episodes of Ben Casey between the 1965 and 66 seasons, and he was on 6 episodes of Perry Mason, also in the early 60s. But again, beyond that, episode here, episode there, a couple episodes here, no real longevity. Episode 4 is titled The Last of the Red Hot Playwrights. Bernie writes a play called Everybody Has One, based upon his family and in-laws. Episode 5 is titled Who's Watching the Store? With the Steinbergs away, Bridget and her family run the deli for the day with disastrous consequences. That almost needs a Susan, I think. We'll just play all the Susans. Episode 6 is titled The Newly Beds. Not weds, newly beds. Bridget and Bernie feel pressured when each set of parents buys them a new bed. Now I'm genuinely curious. I'm genuinely curious to know if the beds were twin beds and they had them separated. I know this is 1972, but is sharing one bed something that would fly on network TV in 1972? Again, using the backstory here, how would America react if a Catholic girl and a Jewish male shared the same bed? We'll go to episode 7, which is Happiness is Just a Thing Called Mo. Uncle Mo begins a romance with Walt's sister, Teresa. We do have a name playing that Teresa, Harriet E. McGibbon. She was Mrs. Drysdale on the Beverly Hillbillies, one of the supporting characters. She was on a total of 55 episodes of the Beverly Hillbillies. Episode 8 is titled Bernie's Last Stand. Bridget and Bernie move into an upscale apartment, a gift from the Fitzgeralds, but encounter discrimination. Now it's rearing its ugly head. The discrimination piece. In this episode, we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Morrison, and Mr. Morrison is played by, and if this guy is in the Hall of Fame soon, it's going to be a travesty because this is, I don't know how many times we've talked about this guy, but John Fiedler is in this episode as Mr. Morrison. And where we've talked about him, he was on Buffalo Bill, and he's on so many other things. Buffalo Bill's the one that comes to mind immediately. He was the voice of Piglet in the Winnie the Pooh cartoons, basically until his death, which would have been almost 20 years ago, June of 2005. But when you hear that voice, it's a unique voice that can easily be identified. You hear the voice, you see his face, you've seen him, trust me. And actually, I think I mentioned in the past that John Fiedler was in the original 12 Angry Men. If my math is right, he was juror number 2. Episode 9 is titled How to Be a Jewish Mother. Bridget feels she may be able to relate to Bernie better and become closer to his family if she learns more about Judaism. Sounds good in theory. Episode 10 is titled The Little White Lie That Grew and Grew. Bridget and her parents pretend to be Jewish for Bernie's visiting aunt. This can't end well. Oh, and if this is the visiting aunt, I can only imagine what happened. Her name is Aunt Ruthie, and she's played by Nancy Walker. There's so many things that we could talk about Nancy Walker having been on. First and foremost, she played like the housekeeper on Macmillan and Wife, but also we talked about her previously on the Nancy Walker Show. She was on Rhoda. I think she was also on Blansky's Beauties, because Blansky's Beauties and the Nancy Walker Show, they were on the same season. I think we talked about that when we talked about one or the other show. I don't remember if it was Blansky's Beauties. I don't remember if it was the Nancy Walker Show. But she was on both of those shows, and I think that was the first time somebody was ever the lead of two separate shows in the same season, because one got canceled. Episode number 11 is The In-Laws Who Came to Dinner. When their apartment is destroyed by a fire, the Steinbergs stay with the Fitzgeralds, but Walt fears they'll interfere with his business deal. Episode 12 is titled The Homecoming. Bernie begins questioning himself when he sees how, at home, Bridget is in the upper-class lifestyle. AKA, she's spending too much money, I bet. She's using that credit card. There's a couple on this episode titled The Hamiltons. Scott Hamilton, not the figure skater, obviously, is played by Michael Clary, who wasn't in a whole heck of a lot of anything. But his wife, I'm going to assume it's wife or girlfriend, some sort of relation, maybe even sister. It's unknown what the relationship is, but Cynthia Hamilton was played by Morgan Brittany, a big name from like the 70s and 80s. She played Catherine Wentworth on Dallas. Also, maybe it's just me, but when I hear Morgan Brittany, I remember getting confused between Morgan Brittany and Morgan Fairchild when I was a kid. And I think all it took was John Lovitz saying that Morgan Fairchild was his wife. That's the ticket.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
Tommy Flanagan. Yeah, that's the ticket. Episode 13 is titled, You Are Cordially Not Invited. The Steinbergs are insulted not to be invited to a party the Fitzgeralds are throwing to honor Israeli military leader Moshe Dayan. Maybe it's just me, but my seat's getting very hot right now. Episode 14 is titled Tis the Season. This did air around Christmas time, December 16th of 1972. I wonder if they're going to celebrate both Christmas and Hanukkah. Just a random guess without even looking at the capsule. Celebrating Christmas becomes complicated for Bridget and Bernie due to the Steinbergs' strong Jewish beliefs. When the couple plans to leave and spend Christmas elsewhere, the families begin to realize what's most important. Again, my tush is burning. The seat's getting really hot. We do have a name in this episode. Playing Rabbi Chuck Lieberman is Shelley Novak. Shelley Novak played Charlie Benson on Most Wanted, which was
a Quinn Martin production.
And actually, he died in 1978 at 34 years old. He died of a heart attack at 34. Oh my gosh. In addition to being on Most Wanted, he really made the rounds on Quinn Martin shows. He was on an episode of Barnaby Jones in 1975. He was on 3 episodes of The Streets of San Francisco. And he was on 1 episode of, and we mentioned this a few weeks ago, Burt D'Angelo Superstar. Let's move on to episode 15, which is Belated Honeymoon. Bridget and Bernie's plans for a belated honeymoon become increasingly complicated, because everything is complicated with this relationship. Episode 16 is titled Honesty is the Worst Policy. Bridget and Bernie learn that the other had a serious relationship when they met. Episode 17 is Life Begins at 65. When the Steinbergs begin treating Uncle Mo as too old to work, he leaves home and becomes the Fitzgerald's butler. We have a name playing just a young man. No name given. He's a young man. Give him about a year. He's going to be on a really big show. Anson Williams, Potsy.
And he has a card in Americana, Mike.
He does. You're right about that.
And I got an autographed card of Anson Williams a while back.
I don't think I have any cards of Anson Williams outside of the base cards.
Oh.
So that might be something I need to go pick up on eBay. pick up an Anson Williams autograph or something like that. Episode 18 is titled With This Ring. Bridget can't bring herself to tell Bernie that she's lost the diamond ring he just bought her. Good heavens, is this episode jam-packed with guests. Let's start out with the jewelry store clerk, who is played by Ozzie Nelson from Ozzie and Harriet. But then playing a jewelry store customer, how about this? Harriet Nelson from Ozzie and Harriet. So you had Ozzie Nelson and Harriet Nelson on this episode playing unnamed characters. Again, jewelry store clerk, jewelry store customer. But that is just tip of the iceberg. Playing Harry in this episode, again, no last name, Harry is played by Jack Carter, legendary comedian. A clerk in this episode is played by Ray Walston. You would remember him from My Favorite Martian. He played the Martian. But also, and I don't want to hear it from the guys, so I'm going to jump in really fast to cover my butt. He also did play Mr. Hand on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And again, not even probably the biggest name. None of those four may be the biggest name. This may be the biggest name coming up. Playing Gaylord Armstrong. Jack LaLanne, the king of fitness back in the 50s through like the late 70s, early 80s. And now I'm reminded, and I don't know if you remember this. Do you guys remember an infomercial back in the 90s with Jack LaLanne promoting something? I don't remember if it was some sort of appliance or some sort of nutritional supplement. But Jack LaLanne, I remember him in this infomercial, like pulling a tugboat behind him in like the Hudson River or something like that. Somebody laughed, so I'm guessing that's not just a Klaus memory.
I remember two things. One, he was promoting a juicer.
The juicer! I knew it was an appliance. It was a juicer. That's right.
And two, I remember him being parodied by Jim Carrey on In Living Color.
Yes! Yes! I remember that too.
Now I have two questions. So Jack LaLanne pulled a tugboat. So obviously it was not the Shockmaster he was pulling. And second, when Jack LaLanne had to advertise the juicer, did he put out any tiny classified ads?
Oh, no.
I don't think he worked with Don LaPrey. Let's move on to the next episode, which happens to be episode 19, and it's titled, Into Every Life a Little Snow Must Fall. A blizzard forces the families to stay together, with Walt and Sam angry with one another. So the dads are fighting. Episode 20 is titled, To Teach or Not to Teach. The families are upset that Bridget is teaching a sex ed class. Meanwhile, Sam and Mo are awaiting a stripper film for a bachelor party. Things go hilariously wrong when the films get mixed up. Oh my gosh. We've gone into absolutely bizarre territory, but also at the same time, I'm curious, did the sex ed film do anything for the guys at the bachelor party? These are the ovaries. This is a vagina. No, we don't want to see an animated vagina. We want to see a rip. Never mind. It was probably something like that. Episode 21 is titled, Painting, Who's Got the Painting? Steinbergs and Fitzgeralds argue over ownership of what appears to be a Botticelli Old Master. Episode 22 is titled Steinberg and Son. Okay, hold on. I got something to say, but I'm going to save it for the end of this capsule. Sam and Walt bring Bernie into their respective businesses. We do have a name playing Sid in this episode, and I do believe I inducted this guy in the Hall of Fame last year. Cliff Norton. We talked about him on Where's Huddles. He played Huddles, the main character. But he's been on so many different things. We talked about him on Love Sydney. We talked about him on The Ropers. He did an episode of Kolchak the Night Stalker. We may have talked about him there too. And Lots of Luck. And The Paul Lynde Show. Now, the Steinberg and Son thing I wanted to mention, there was actually, in 1975, an episode of Sanford and Son called Steinberg and Son. And I think we've talked about this in the past, because the son of Steinberg and Son, which was a takeoff of Sanford and Son but with Jewish characters, interestingly enough, the son was played by John Larroquette. And I remember when we talked about this, we talked about the father. He was on some show, and I said, oh, that's the father on Steinberg and Son. So a little, I don't know what it is. It's a little something, a little connection because of the shared title between the two shows. The penultimate episode, episode 23, is titled The Information Gap. When Bridget and Bernie ask their parents for more privacy, Mo spies to think they are bringing a baby into the family. Oh my gosh, that probably tops out the controversy meter for this series. The Catholic and the Jewish guy are going to have a baby. All hell breaks loose. Maybe not all hell in 2025, but 1973. It's a touchy subject. Directing this episode, we just talked about this person a couple of episodes back, guesting on this show, Ozzie Nelson. And that's going to take us to the final episode, which is titled Greener Pastures. Bridget and Bernie consider moving away from the city. The director of this episode, he would have actually been sort of in between gigs at this point. Bill Bixby. It's after My Favorite Martian, but coming up later in 73, he would be starring on The Magician. That's the series, and we could take a look at the ratings. I've gone through all of them. Consistently, this show was always in the top 10. I don't think I found a single week of ratings where it was below the top 10. It was a rating smash. For the 1972-1973 season, it finished 5th. It was also sandwiched in CBS's Saturday night lineup, and this is a powerhouse lineup. All in the Family at 8 p.m. 8:30 is Bridget Loves Bernie. 9 p.m. is the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Then the Bob Newhart Show. Then the Carol Burnett Show. Plus also Mission Impossible, which I'm guessing is near the end of its run. Mission Impossible ended its run in March of 73. But when you take a look at this lineup, All the Family was the #1 show on primetime television in the 1972-1973 season. Bridget and Bernie was 5th. Mary Tyler Moore was 7th. Bob Newhart Show was 16th. And Mission Impossible wasn't in the top 30, but the Carol Burnett Show, for its brief little run there around December of 1972, it was the 22nd rated show on television. That's a powerhouse lineup. If we take a look at what Bridget Loves Bernie went up against, well, obviously it beat the competition. It was the 5th highest rated show on television, for heaven's sakes. On NBC, it went up against the second half hour of Emergency, another good show in its own right. On ABC, to start, it went up against the second half hour of Alias Smith and Jones. This would have been the end of its run. It was done by January of 73. And then after that, at the 8:30 time slot, you had A Touch of Grace, whatever that is. And looking really fast, it's a sitcom about a widow who was recently widowed with Shirley Booth. So there's life after Hazel. But then after that's gone, it was replaced by a previous entry, The Paul Lynde Show. It should also be noted that the show that replaced Bridget Loves Bernie in the 1973-74 season, a little show you may have heard of called MASH. CBS was not hurting at all. As was mentioned earlier, this show was the 5th highest rated show on television, but it only ran 1 season. You could probably guess why it ran the 1 season based on some of the stories we heard talk about plot lines. The interfaith marriage didn't sit too well, specifically with the Jewish community. Some quotes, and these come directly from Wikipedia. Some Jewish groups charged that the series, quote-unquote, mocked the teachings of Judaism. Rabbi Wolf Kellman, executive vice president of the Rabbinical Assembly of America, called the show, quote, an insult to some of the most sacred values of both the Jewish and Catholic religions. Rabbi Meir Kahan wrote an essay on the series. Orthodox rabbis met with CBS officials several times. A conservative rabbi organized a boycott by advertisers, and Reform rabbis met with CBS staff in secret to have the show canceled. Rabbi Abraham Gross, president of the Rabbinical Alliance of Orthodox Rabbis and Educators, described the show as a flagrant insult to Jews, protesting that intermarriage was strictly forbidden under Jewish law. Threats followed. Meredith Baxter said, we had bomb threats on the show. Some guys from the Jewish Defense League came to my house to say they wanted to talk with me about changing the show. Threatening phone calls made to the home of producer Ralph Riskin resulted in the arrest of Robert S. Manning, described as a member of the Jewish Defense League. Creepily enough, and that's me saying that, that's not in the Wikipedia article, but creepily enough, Manning was later indicted on unrelated murder charges and fought extradition to the United States from Israel, where he fled. There was a lot of controversy. Again, this wouldn't be a big issue nowadays, but 53 years ago, 52 years ago, it was very forbidden. The show was released on DVD in 2012 by Sony Pictures Home Entertainment as one of the manufacturer-on-demand DVD sets. And you can get it through WBshop.com or Amazon.com. This series has rerun, not in the recent past. About 2 years ago, Catchy Comedy, actually it was decades, it was before it turned to Catchy Comedy, they spent a Saturday doing a binge of this TV show. And best I can tell, they did air all 24 episodes. To finish the show, there is a similar show which just ended its network run in the last couple of months by the name of Bob Hart's Abishola. And it ran for a good 4 or 5 seasons. There's no way in hell that was survived in 1972. Maybe in the 80s it would, especially after the Willises on the Jeffersons were the first interracial couple on television, but maybe not for an entire series. I think that's another one of those taboo things that the American public didn't really, I don't want to say get over, they didn't accept it until probably the early 2000s, to be honest. Maybe even a little bit earlier than that. Definitely not before the 90s. What can we say about Bridget Loves Bernie? It was a rating smash. I mentioned in the preview to this episode last week, it was the single highest rated television show in TV history to get canceled after 1 season. Obviously, audiences loved it. Also, maybe obviously, religious leaders didn't like it. And their complaints were made loud and clear. And unfortunately, Bridget Loves Bernie became a 1-season wonder and just a thing on TV. You can find us at our website, itwasathingontv.com, on Facebook at It Was a Thing on TV Podcast, and elsewhere at It Was a Thing on TV. You can find us on any podcast player, and we're also on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our releases, including what's coming up next time. On Thursday, we're going to talk about another show that is very similar to what we just talked about. It's another show that has a Jewish male character, and he's dating somebody of a different religion. This didn't get canceled, though, for the same reasons that Bridget Loves Bernie got canceled. There's actually 2 really interesting reasons why that show got canceled. And similarly to Bridget Loves Bernie, this was another show that was highly rated before its cancellation. But we'll get into all of that next time right here at It Was a Thing on TV. Thank you very much for listening. If you are seemingly anywhere in the United States, please stay safe, bundle up, stay warm. I know this area is going to get awfully darn cold the next 48 hours or so. Look on your loved ones. Look at the elderly. Make sure they're doing fine. But please, after you take care of them and take care of yourself, come back here on Thursday for that next episode.
Wow.
That sounded like it was painful.
Okay, let me try to do it again.
Saturday on CBS. Have we got a night for you? All in the Family. Bridget loves Bernie.
Look at it this way. How many parents get to attend the honeymoon?
The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Have we got a call for you?
The Bob Newhart Show. Mission Impossible.